We've noticed in Boston in the last few weeks a slight uptick. Positive increase rates went from 2.1% to 2.8%, but the most recent 7-day analysis brings us back down to 2.5%. Similar patterns in daily new cases, the emergency rooms visits are the same way. They're not alarming increases yet, but we are seeing slight increases, which makes us pay very close attention to the numbers on a daily basis. These numbers still remain far below levels we saw during the surge in April and May, and they have not reached a level that would cause us to look at rolling back any of the openings that we've already had here in the city of Boston. It's an uptick, but it's not an established trend, and that's another thing that we watch out for. For people at home that are watching, we look at these trends to see if we have cases increasing on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and we're not seeing that. We are monitoring the data very closely, and we're working to understand the uptick and what this activity means. And we're also providing resources to residents to protect them from their health and slow the spread of the virus. We continue also to expand testing, and that could be another reason why we're seeing an increase in some of these numbers. Last week, we had an average of 1,500, almost 1,600 cases, tests, given in Boston each day. That was up over 10% from the previous week and up over 50% earlier this summer. So we're doing much more testing here in Boston on a daily basis. Our mobile test teams are out in the neighborhoods offering testing to anyone who wants them. The mobile site is currently at Moakley Park in South Boston through this Saturday. You can find, if you want to find out what testing sites are in your neighborhood or where the mobile van will be, you can go to boston.gov/coronavirus. What we need to do now is maintain our focus and recommit our efforts, and that certainly means all of us on a daily basis. Every individual, every business, every sector, every organization here in Boston. Businesses need to continue to follow the reopening guidelines. This has been a tough time for many industries, especially our restaurants, as we all know. But another surge could be devastating to them if we have to pull back on our services. It would be worse for businesses as well. We are committed to supporting our small businesses here in Boston. Any businesses with less than 25 employees can apply for reopening grants. If you haven't done that, please go to boston.gov/reopening fund. That's boston.gov/reopening funds. I also just want to remind people who travel from out of the state you need to comply with the requirements on testing and quarantine. I'm especially concerned also about colleges bringing back students to campus from high-risk states, and that's been a topic of conversation in the press, quite honestly, for the last couple of weeks here. We've asked colleges to share with us their plans for testing and quarantining and safety protocols. We want to see that they're developing a mechanism to implement and enforce these requirements. Many colleges have submitted information to us. We're looking at that information now, and there's still a few outstanding colleges that have not provided us with that information, so we're asking you to please provide us with that information. For individuals, I know that we've been saying this consistently, myself and the governor and almost every person that gets in front of a TV camera, each of us has the ability and the obligation to protect ourselves and help prevent the spread of any potential outbreak. So we're asking people to continue to wash your hands with soap and warm water. We're asking people to keep wearing a face covering outside of your home. We're asking people to keep 6 feet away from other people as much as possible, particularly if those are not family members. And we're asking you to avoid large crowds and large gatherings. The governor rolled back earlier this week a move to reduce gatherings from 100 people down to 50. I certainly support that. In Boston, we already had limited the outdoor events to 50 people since the beginning of Phase 3. And we're still not allowing public or private meetings in city buildings. I also want to ask, last week we had some events, some baseball games at some of our parks in the city, and many of the spectators, the parents or family and friends, weren't wearing masks. We're asking, when you go to a baseball game, a Little League baseball game, you should be wearing the mask. You should be making sure that you're protecting not just the kids that are playing, but also protecting other people around you. So again, a place like that, we'd like to have your mask available. If you're sitting away from a large crowd, just have your mask ready to go on if somebody approaches you. I certainly understand as well, because we all do, people wanting to get together. People want to go out. Families want to celebrate milestones. These are human needs, and many people are quite honestly frustrated with where we are in the society today with the coronavirus. But we have to be clear, it's not time right now to let up. This virus is still here and very much present, and that's our reality. We can meet the needs of our social connections in ways that can be safe. If you want to meet people in parks, you meet in small groups, wear a mask. If you want to go to the beach, don't sit in areas where it's crowded. Sit away from people. If you want to go for walks, bike rides, or car rides, that's okay. But again, if you're going to have an interaction with anyone, we're asking you to wear the masks. Make sure you constantly wash your hands. If you go to a restaurant, obviously when you go into a restaurant, you have to have a mask on till you sit down. So we're asking you to be cognizant of that and be respectful of the patrons around you to make sure that as you go out and enjoy yourself, you're also protecting the people around you and you're being protected yourself. We're asking people to continue to check on elderly neighbors and residents and people that are shut in. Just check on them to see if they need anything. And if you approach them, have a mask on, but see how we can help them move forward. You can have fun, but we want you to make sure that we minimize the risks. The bottom line here is that Boston is still doing very well. Compared to much of the United States, we're certainly a lot better than those states. But it wasn't that long ago that we were those states. It wasn't that long ago we were getting hundreds, if not thousands, of new cases a day here in the city and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm very proud of the work that's been going on in the city and the way people have been interacting, and I want to thank you for that, and I want to ask you to continue to do that. We know what to do. We've been doing it for a long time now, and it's going to keep allowing us, if we keep doing it, we need to make sure that every decision we make, that we're very cautious about what we do moving forward. I'm going to take a minute to talk a little bit about Boston Public Schools. The most important collective step before us right now, making decisions, is the Boston Public Schools reopening. I know that many people are anxious about the decision. Parents are concerned and also need time to make plans. Teachers have concerns and they're also worried and they need time to make plans. And everyone is rightly concerned about their safety and the safety of our young people. I want to be clear about the priorities that we've laid out here. Keeping everyone safe is our first priority. That means our kids, our families, that means all of our teachers, our staff, that means our community at large. It means, quite honestly, everyone. We will be guided, as I've said from the very beginning, by the science and data as we've been throughout this pandemic. The reason why I start the conversation every time I have a press conference with the numbers is so people understand where we are in the fight against coronavirus. I'm going to continue to do that. We've never held back any information from the public. When we get it out. There's going to be no difference when it comes to schools. We know this year we'll not be starting with all in-person learning in our schools because we know, quite honestly, that it could be dangerous to our families and kids. We will either be starting with a hybrid model or a period of all remote learning. The hybrid model would allow us the ability, and I'm going to talk about it in a minute, to have the separation and the protocol and the safety protocol for our kids and our teachers and our staff inside the schools. Whichever route we take in September, we're doing the work now to make sure that both remote learning and in-school learning will be as safe and as effective as they can be. We are working with our school leaders and facility professionals right now to make sure that every school will be safe for a return back to school. We're providing plexiglass and vinyl separators. We've ordered over almost 5,000 pieces of plexiglass. We're providing nurses' rooms with properly ventilated isolation spaces. We're making sure that the HVAC systems are working and have new filters in all of the systems. We're adjusting windows so learning spaces have fresh air. What do I mean by that? Some of our schools, the windows don't open. We're going to make sure that in all the classrooms at least one window can open, and assisting that with ventilation systems in the classrooms. We're buying electrostatic sprayers to disinfect surfaces. Those are those sprayers that you've seen where you spray and it kills the virus instantly. We're buying enough for one for every single school in the district. We're installing sanitizing stations at the entrances of our schools and the exits. So when you walk into the building, you're able to wash your hands or use Purell or hand sanitizer, if you will, and be able to have safe spaces walking into the schools. We're making sure that our foot traffic is properly marked for spacing and safety signage, making sure it's everywhere. Many of you, if you've gone to the doctor right here at City Hall Plaza, going into the building, we have it marked so when you're coming in, people aren't on top of each other. We're doing the same thing in our schools to make sure there's separation in our schools. And every school will receive a certificate of inspection by our Inspectional Services Department before they're opening. Just like we did with restaurants, just like we're doing with some businesses in the city of Boston, we're not going to treat our schools any different. It's going to be a top priority to make sure that our inspectors are out there inspecting our schools. We will not send students or teachers or staff into a building that is not safe. Boston Public Schools are also working right now to strengthen remote learning, expanding technology and internet access to make sure that our kids, any gaps that we had when we closed school down back in March, that we fix those gaps, that people don't have them in their homes. We're creating new outreach and supports plans for families. Because if we start all remote, and some of it will be remote, we have to make sure that we get it right. Because my concern right now with school is that we have a growing achievement gap, in particular for our Black and Latino students. And I'm concerned that if we don't have the remote learning or the in-person learning right, that achievement gap is going to continue to grow. We're working on developing solutions for SPED students and English language learners. I know there's a lot of parents out there that are concerned about their kids, and we're working on plans right now about how do we give you the assistance that you need to help you and your family. We're talking with child care providers about the role that they play and much more on how they can assist us and how we move forward. The spring was a crisis response. This fall will be more planned and more supported because we've had the time to sit down and work, and we need to continue to sit down with all of our unions, our teachers, and all of our unions to make sure that a month from now, however we open school, our kids are going to learn at the highest quality. We know that there's going to be remote learning this year. We hope that there'll be in-person learning this year, or at least I hope that there'll be in-person learning this year. We're planning and preparing to make sure that both of them work and it's high quality. We are planning and preparing with the needs of our most vulnerable students in mind. As I talked about, our SPED kids and kids with the education gap, achievement gap. We've invested money this year, $80 million this year in our school system to help close those gaps. It's plans created by Brenda Casillas, our superintendent. We need to make sure that we do everything we can that our kids get high quality education with high quality learning. Our schools have two public health crises right now. We have a COVID pandemic, and we have a crisis of race and equity. We've seen them intersect in the COVID numbers, and we've responded. We've also seen how this equity crisis plays out over many years in our schools. We've watched it. That's why we've increased the budget with a targeted focus on closing opportunity and achievement gaps. We have to get this right. Our kids are depending on us doing this. So as we think about reopening, all of this is taken into account. For the safety and well-being of our students, we have to start the year with the same focus on equity. Families where adults are working can't always help keep their kids engaged. Students learning English and students with disabilities depend on in-person supports. Children living in shelters need places to go. These are safety issues for many of our children. We have to meet those needs from the first day school begins, or those students will suffer. We can't, and we're not going to let that happen. The most fundamental need we have has been serving since COVID arrived is feeding our kids. The work is facing a major challenge right now. The USDA grant waiver to allow summer meals to be served in safe ways, including the grab and go sites and direct delivery students to home, the BPS is feeding tens of thousands of children, and the need to feed them continues. But the waiver is set to expire August 31st. If it's not extended, the Boston Public Schools will have to stop deliveries to students with disabilities and homeless families. The safe grab-and-go setup would have to change. Sites would no longer be open to all children. This would present major logistical changes. We are simply asking the federal government, in the midst of the pandemic, to let us feed our children safely. We started the year with education and affordable housing as our top goals. And certainly, they still remain our top goals, and the pandemic has thrown many curveballs at us. And we continue to move forward on all of this work. Today, I'm announcing that we're making $30 million available for affordable housing. Requests for proposals went out this week, and we'll be awarding projects in September. There's a $4 million set aside for formerly homeless tenants. Winning projects have to demonstrate diversity in the development teams, and they must advance our goals of being a carbon-neutral city. Since construction restarted on June 26th, 26 projects have resumed, with nearly 1,200 affordable homes being built. And this new funding will help us create more affordable homes. I just want to close today by reminding everyone to respond to the 2020 U.S. Census. The Trump administration continues to undermine this constitutional requirement in an effort to undercount people of color, immigrants in cities. This would have disastrous consequences for the city of Boston. The best way to fight back is to sign up for the census now. Go to my2020census.gov, or you can do it by phone. It's quick, it's confidential, and it's safe. To learn more or to help out with outreach efforts, visit Boston Counts 2020's website. As I mentioned, this is very important to the city of Boston. This is how we get fair representation in Congress. It's how we get our fair share of federal investment back into the city of Boston. Everyone counts equally in our democracy, so everyone deserves to be counted and represented. So I'm asking everyone, please fill out the census form if you haven't done it. If you keep putting it off, right now, after this press conference, is a good time to go to my2020census.gov, hop online and fill out the census, or you can call 311 and we can connect you with how you do it.